Ja, velkommen. Som Knut sa, så skal vi på en måte gjøre en liten reise fra den blodige sagaen til dagens islandske krim med Ylsa og Jon Ottar. Vi kommer til å gjøre det på engelsk, så er dere forberedt på det. Yes, we're going to talk about two things today. We're going to do sort of like a trip from the sagas to the crime novels today. We're going to talk about both your books, but let's start with the sagas. I could do it myself, of course, but Ylsa, would you please give us a short history lesson about the sagas? Kunne ikke gjort det selv, altså.
Sagas are sort of Iceland's contribution to sort of world history. We don't have any castles or any crown jewels or any physical things because everything was perishable. But we do have this to give to the world about these sagas written somehow between 1100 to 1200. Yeah. And they are about, I don't know, 30 in total, 20, 30?
So, well, a few dozen stories. But they are basically written down, and they are telling about things that happened around the year 900, Iceland was settled, when we escaped from Norway because we didn't want to pay taxes. So,
Look what you lost.
There was a discussion in Iceland after the fall of the banks that we should actually go back. Just go to the king and can you please take us back?
You are so welcome. But so the sagas, they're somehow based on true stories, but they're still fiction?
Yeah, they're basically telling the story of settlement in most cases, and they're usually about feuding, like fighting between families and sort of revenge for usually killing of someone.
Yeah, the stories about how society basically handles conflict without having authority, without basically having police, and it usually doesn't end well. So it's and how the blood feuds usually end in a bad way for everyone.
Yeah, don't glorify killing at all. They show you the consequences, what happens if you kill someone. It's going to sort of escalate and become worse and worse until, yeah, it usually ends badly for almost everyone.
Yeah, the biggest heroes usually die, so because the guys who do most of the slaying or the killing, they usually end up being killed themselves.
They are quite brutal.
Yeah.
They depict violence in a very clear way, and you have one of the characters, he kills his first. He kills for the first time when he was very little, 6 or 7 years old. So I don't know if that's actually based on a true story, but maybe.
And I know that in Iceland you have to read, is it 3 or 4 of them in school?
At least 3.
It's 3. And they, for Icelandic people in the last century, they were really important because we basically, when we were starting out to be a nation on our own, we did not have an identity basically. So we looked to those books for our identity.
Some people learn them by heart.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And some people say that we read them a little bit too well because the Icelandic Bank was basically raided Europe after the 2007 and maybe, so maybe we should read something else.
For a while.
Yeah, I think so.
Reading them when you were young, how did you feel about it? Did you like it? Or?
I think girls like them less than boys do because it's sort of a masculine world that's described there. There are female characters and they do have catalysts often for events, but I don't remember being like super proud or no, not really.
Females in the stories are usually the reason for the killing. Not
like today.
Yeah, but there's only one basically major character in the sagas, which is female. So it's a man's world.
You know, in crime literature, we will often talk about things that you need to have to write a good crime novel. Is it possible to make a list of things that the sagas needed to have?
A sword or two, feud.
A couple of clans.
Yeah.
But also you need to have like almost an impossible mission. The mission of the protagonist is always he knows he's going to lose, but he still keeps on going.
Yeah.
So, which is maybe a little bit similar to crime novels today, because many of the protagonists in crime novels, somehow you feel like they're going to lose, at least in the end, but they still keep on going. So it's the fight basically that they focus on.
Have the sagas affected your authorship in any way?
Well, I'm not aware of it. Most of the books I read is, I usually read crime fiction, but on a subconscious level maybe, because these are books which have been talked about and they've been a part of my education, my upbringing. So, like most things in life, they probably influence you. But yeah, maybe the way, like in my book, my main character has this urge, or when you have some feeling that he may be on a losing streak in the end, but he still keeps on going. So yeah, maybe.
How about you?
I don't think so. No, maybe there might be like a piece of like a building block like I was saying, we have to learn about in the school, and the character, the person is made up of all kinds of events in the past. But I don't think so, because they're also, at this time, they were written by hand, so they're short, they're very into also genealogy a bit. They tell like who's related to who, that's very important. So I think they are pretty much a child of that time. I don't think anyone would write a story today that would be strongly based on them, and we would find it.
They usually begin with several pages of who is related to whom, and if you add that into a publisher today, then this needs. You have to catch them on the first page. So and they don't really, but you have to read them through to get there.
But they are, they are interesting, and they're nice, and they're very quickly read. So I think at least they're available on the internet in Icelandic, and I think also in English translation free. So it's totally recommended to read them. It's very interesting.
But except from the killing, of course, are there any similarities to the crime novels today?
No. It's always clear who did it.
Maybe the similarity would be that in some crime novels, the police officer, like the character I read, he needs to go outside of the police, and he needs to bend the rules a little bit, and even almost break them to catch the guy in the end. So he's maybe leaving the police force, which is non-existent in the sagas, because there everyone is just on their own, and they need to resolve all their issues on their own. So maybe this isolation of the character, or this alienation of the character from the police as an institute is somewhat similar to the way people in the sagas are actually trying to solve their own problems on their own.
It could be like a political thriller in a way, because it's sort of wheeling and dealing
But let's leave the sagas and slowly move towards Icelandic crime novels of today. You have written many of them yourself. You're a debutante, you know that. How did you start writing?
Well, I started writing in the winter of 2007-2008, when I was still a police officer myself. And I was reading a book, a crime novel, it's basically what I read. And there was this tiny irrelevant flaw which didn't make any difference to the story as a whole. But I thought, whoa, he could have just as easily had this correct. So I started to think maybe I can have a go.
And you found the mistake, of course, because you've been working in the police and you have all your background from the police.
Förra så det var ju en mikrofon på han.
Yeah, okay. Just going to change your
Var det
microphone.
gå upp så gör det sen.
Yeah. We can talk a bit in the meantime about your latest book, De Uønskede,
Yes.
in Norwegian. What's it called in Icelandic?
It's called Kultu, which means cold. And it was a reference to like the coldness of some people's souls. In a way.
Because you actually said that the Norwegian translation is more accurate in
Yes,
some ways.
yes, it is. Because the book is, the subject matter is about people and children who sort of are in society or within their family and so on. And so I found that a very nice title. I should have thought of it.
Once again, Norway comes to the rescue.
You all come here.
Yeah.
But back to you, Lotta. You found this flaw in the book, and you thought I could do this better, or
No, I didn't think I was just going to do it better. I thought maybe I can have a go, and I tried to combine my background as a police officer with my background as a criminologist, because as I never expected to be a writer, I never expected to be a police officer. The academic background and the police background, I want to combine that to see if I could have another take on the crime novel.
at that time, when you found this mistake in the crime novel that you read, and wanted to start writing yourself, did you think that you, some years later, would be sitting here with the crime queen of Iceland?
No, not. It's a funny thing, like how it ends.
And your first book is called The Overvåket. Your main character is a police officer.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the usual flaw.
No, he doesn't
That
drink.
he doesn't drink. No.
He's pretty much sober when he's trying to solve the crime, so, which I found really useful when I was sober. And the police chief would have, he wouldn't be nice to you if you were really drunk as well.
How would you describe David, except from the soberness?
He's very focused. He's a little bit similar to myself, but he has an academic background. But he's also been a policeman for many years. But he's very focused, and of course he has problems. He has problems with his wife and within his family. But like what we talked about earlier about how the protagonists in the sagas were focused on, and they always felt this need to continue. They needed to avenge something. He feels the same need to find the killer. And there's a specific reason why he feels this need. And he's totally obsessed, basically, with his work. Which because this is the first of three, which will have an effect on his life. But focused this is.
And you have one thing in common with these two books, because your plot is in some way made up by actual events in Iceland.
The story is totally fictional. So, but some of the scenes are the way he's working. They are based on real life.
But you also have the collapse of the Icelandic banks, which is in the background, and
yeah, basically there are three themes in the book. There's one, of course, is the killing and the murder mystery, and then there's the banking crisis, the link to what did they actually do, the bankers, and why did this all collapse, all the banks. And also there's this method that David uses to investigate, which is basically watching. He's just always watching people. He doesn't go and talk to all the suspects. He's watching them through listening to their phones, to their homes. So there's overworking, the surveillance. So the books are basically a little bit of a critique of the surveillance industry and how authorities are always asking about more powers to use surveillance to look into our lives. It's a discussion about what happens when you're also a topic or when the focus is on you. What happens?
There's also some critique in your book.
Yeah.
You have like one story, but still two stories.
Yes.
Your main character, one of them is Odin.
Yes.
He's today.
Yeah.
But you also have a part of the book that's in the 70s.
Yeah. It tells the story that the two main characters. One in the present day, who is Odin, and I used the opportunity because I'm an engineer, and you can't really write a crime series about an engineer because nobody wants us involved when there's murder. So you have this one chance, this standalone, so I can bring in finally an engineer, and he is working for the government, investigating, sort of looking into an operation of a child's home that we had in the late 60s and 70s, where they would take children from homes where they believed they were sort of not in good conditions. It could just be that the mother was a single mother or very poor, maybe a lot of drinking in the family, and also juvenile delinquents. And then actually what happened at the home. Because it begins with, or there are two boys that died there, and I was looking into this, if this was something suspect or an accident.
Is it important for you as a writer to use things that actually happened or to talk about things in the society that you...
Yes, it is. Yeah. In some way, in Iceland we have so few murders. We have, I think, 1.5 on average or something a year. And
I'm very curious about the half, but I'm not nice.
and it's usually 100% clear who is the murderer because he's the one standing above the body with the knife. So it's not really. So you're asking your Icelandic readers to leave a little bit reality and sort of enter into fiction. And to be able to get away with having maybe the storyline a bit, the crime more complex than what you would expect sort of in a newspaper, it's very important to keep everything else very believable. And that would be having the characters like real people, not ridiculous or exaggerated, and also to make society the way it is. So the stage is believable. The actors are, the characters are also doing a good job. And that's very important because then you can get away with making, like I say, the storyline a little bit further from reality. But you have to make sure though that it could happen. It doesn't have to happen, but it needs to be able to happen.
I'm sure many have read your books about Thora.
Yeah.
As you said earlier, this is a standalone, it's a whole new characters, everything is new. Why did you choose to do that?
I've written 6 books in the Thora series and I just need a little bit of a break. It becomes, it's a bit refreshing to step away from a series that you've worked on for this long, and I think I will write another Thora book at some point, but when I do I want to really have the urge to do it. And I always feel that you have to write. It might not be smart marketing, but it's good for the soul to write what you want to write each time.
And David, your main character, I know that we will meet him again after the first book. Did you know all along that you would write more than one book about it?
Yeah. It was planned as a trilogy. So because there is one story that links all the books together, which is related to the banking crisis. And so in the end, he will discover some bad bankers and where they hid the money in a plausible way. And the idea for that came from both from when I was a police officer investigating those kinds of crimes, and also when I was working in an investment bank in Iceland myself. So it's the overarching story. So they always had to be at least 3 books. So, but then there's a murder case in each book.
With your background, there's of course easy to think that David is somehow based on yourself, but you've already said it's not. That's okay, I trust you. But there's one thing that you and David have in common. Because we don't give away too much, because the book actually starts with David as a police officer being investigated. He's interrogated. And you don't talk about this much in Iceland, but since we're in Norway, this actually happened to you.
Yeah, I was investigating myself. I was charged with a crime in 2012 after I left the police, and the case was dropped. We could prove our innocence, but it took us 9 or 10 months. So during that time, I experienced the full force of the police on myself. So it was quite an experience to be on the other side, on the receiving end of having been a police officer for many years, having used all the methods, for example, that are in the books, listening to people's phones, and breaking into people's houses to put into microphones into the walls, and then having everything turned against me. So that is something I will hopefully never go through again in real life, but in the books I will try to deal with this experience. So, but yeah, I don't recommend it.
The two of you have one thing in common with these books. You both start with the end.
Yeah.
Do you have a reason for that, or did it just happen?
It felt right for this book somehow, and to have like a very dramatic ending, and then trying to explain why did this happen.
But it would be interesting to have a prologue where he is actually being investigated himself. So people would be interested to see how does a police officer go from being the investigator to being answering questions at the police station himself.
One thing about your main characters for many books is that that's quite unusual in crime novels. Actually, none of them are police officers or in the police.
Yeah. Why did I do that?
Why did you do that?
Yeah, well, when I started writing crime fiction, I think all of the Icelandic crime writers that were writing at the time were writing about police, and they were doing it well, and so I didn't think I would really add very much to that mix. And I don't know very much about the police, how they operate, and like it's embarrassing to make a mistake in the procedures and so on. And I really want to know who it was that made a mistake. But it's and I didn't really. It was not interesting going to a police station and trying to find out how they do it. And so for me, it suited better to have a lawyer. The law is closer to my profession in a way, engineering, because I do a lot of books and contracts, and I have a very good friend who's a lawyer, and so it suited me better.
But this time an engineer.
This time an engineer, yes.
Did you know that you might have your next main character sitting there?
He's gonna help. He said that he will help me if I ever decide to have a police. He's gonna help me.
You could just write him. I mean, he's got all the stories. He's got the looks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You'll see if someone appears in a book that looks like him, and you'll know where I got him from.
We will all know where you got him from. We already know you are writing more books about David. Looking forward to that. And you said that Thora is still resting, or on vacation, or...
She's resting, but not in. Yeah, she's trying to get back in. I'm sort of keeping her at bay a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
but we will read something before that.
Yes, there was one that came out in December that will come out next year in Norway, and that's a standalone again.
Understandable.
Yeah.
And in the meanwhile, we will enjoy and read Overvåket and De Uønskede. You should just call it that from now on.
I think so. Yes, maybe it's, yeah, it's good.
I saw you sitting there, so I think we're up.
Yeah.
In time. Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, both of you.